Monique, I know there's lots more things that we could actually say about you, but I'll leave you to say some of that yourself. So again, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that warm welcome. And yes, it's good to see you again as well. And no, I'm not going to bore people with stuff about me because that's not what we're going to spend our time talking about. We have very precious time together, limited time together. So I want to make sure that it's of value for everybody. And I thank you all for making that time. I am curious to find out if I have anybody out there who is not based in Barbados. So if you are based outside, but you might still be in the region, it'd be good to see who we've got hailing from different territories. You could just drop it in the chat. Not to say that, this topic isn't relevant wherever you are, but it's always good to know what kind of makeup we have. And as Karen said, if you have questions, if you have comments, I want you to drop them in the chat. I want you to put your hand up. I want to hear you. I'd love to be able to hear from you as well. So I'm going to make time for that as well. So today, the topic is all about supporting mental health in the workplace, but more importantly, giving you practical tools. So there are three big buckets we're going to look at today. And one is about how to be able to spot the early signs of mental distress within the workplace, and how to differentiate between whether something is a performance challenge or a well-being issue, because it's very important that we diagnose that, if nothing else, before we actually think about how we can support. The next bucket is really how to check in with people, how to do that in a sensitive way, but also make sure that you're not overstepping as well. So what does that look like? What is a check-in? What can we do about checking in with people? And probably most important of all, how to check in with yourself, because HR sits in a very interesting space within the organization. All right, so as we do that, and I hope that everybody can see my screen okay. I'm sure it should be sharing, so you should be seeing that okay, and just indicate, of course, if you can. This is the first thing that I want to get your engagement on, the difference. What is the difference? So if there's anybody out there who's willing to come on mic and chat to me, please do so now. What do we think is the difference between these three things? Or who wants to give a go at just defining stress in your own words?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Maureen.
Hey. I will just say something off the top of my head for all three of them. Well, I am thinking that burnout is when you're at the end, you've passed stress and anxiety, and you're at the end and can't go further.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking anxiety is a little short term. And then I'm thinking stress could be something that is ongoing, and if you don't pay attention, you can continually be in that place of stress and eventually burn out. So that's what it is for me.
Okay, great. Thank you, Maureen. Thanks for getting us started. I want to see if anybody else wants to come in and have a go at this.
Okay, good afternoon.
Hi.
So Maureen started from the bottom. I will start from the stress. I think everybody experiences a bit of stress throughout, in their life.
Yes.
There's eustress, which is good stress. The urge to get stuff done. And then there's distress, where it just becomes so overwhelming. You have so many things to do that you become distressed and anxious. That brings on anxiety. And then when you can't get them done and more things keep coming on top of the things that you currently have to do, that you then become burnt out.
Right. Yeah. So it's an escalation, basically,
Correct.
which is exactly what we said earlier. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you for that. So I've just revealed, and I want you to have a look at it. Take a second to just take in the definitions and see if you can see that build. So stress, first of all, is natural. And I think that that's one thing that I want everybody to take away. It's a natural response, a natural biological response to pressure or deadlines. And actually, in small doses, it can be motivating, right? So the stress of doing a presentation. So you might get that little adrenaline boost and feel a little, oh, is it going to go well? Are people going to like me? Are people going to like the content? And so on. And that's short term and it's motivating and it makes sure that you present your best self. So that's fine. That's okay. That's a natural response to pressure or deadlines. When we're talking about anxiety, it goes beyond stress, and how it presents is persistent worry, restlessness. You might see it turn up as excessive checking, or it can also appear as procrastination. So it can go from one end to the other, right? Avoidance of responsibility. Sorry, I'm just looking in the chat. I just saw something turn up. Okay, Karen.
That was just me, just me.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that somebody's paying attention to the chat.
That's okay. I'm back now.
Right. So it can turn up as excessive check-in, or it might appear as procrastination. Now, you will see that burnout is very, very specific. It is the final stage. Now, there are three markers, what we call three markers of what burnout looks like. And this is the final stage of unmanaged stress. Those three markers are emotional exhaustion. That's probably the biggest one. Emotional exhaustion. And when we think about emotional exhaustion, it's something that we feel physically as well as just are experiencing emotionally. Cynicism also tends to be a trait that turns up very often at this time, right? And this cynicism is married with this sense of ineffectiveness. So it's almost a resignation, of a full resignation of the state of the way things are right now. And this sense of it doesn't matter what I do or what I don't do, this is not having any effect whatsoever. So I'm just going to pause there a minute because I love to get engagement to find out, how does this temper your understanding of the three? And first of all, does this do anything to bring clarity between the three?
Well, me again, Maureen. Well, for
Yeah.
sure, it really, really brought clarity for me as well. So I am happy that you did that. Thank you.
Yes, it's always helpful, I find, to have a definition. Thanks, Maureen. And Muriel said, yes, it does as well in the chat. Thanks, Muriel. And I always find that the bit that dropped, that did the aha for me, was the burnout, was those three things, which if you actually went online and you looked at World Health Organization, they will actually say these are the three markers. And that's how we know the difference, because very often we use these words interchangeably, right? I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling somewhat stressed today. Somebody might use the word burnout, but how do we actually know when this is a major red flag and this is burnout? Because burnout is something else completely. And it's those three markers that we need to be paying attention to. So it's important to be able to make that distinction. And the thing is that when stuff pops up, it's not that these are isolated personal issues, because that they directly impact productivity, teamwork, and ultimately turnover, because it starts to impact the individual's total well-being, both from a physical, not just from a mental, but an emotional, but from a physical perspective as well. So this distinction matters. The other distinction that matters is the distinction between whether or not this is a performance issue versus a well-being issue. So what do you think happens if we treat a performance issue like a well-being issue? So we have something that's actually a performance issue but we're treating it like a well-being issue, or well-being or the other way around, a well-being issue that's being treated like a performance issue. Have a think about what you think the risks are to either scenario. And that could be anybody.
I'm checking the chat. I can't see anything in the chat.
That's okay.
Everyone's being very shy today, Monique.
Yeah, that's all right.
So if you treat, excuse me, a performance issue as a well-being issue, let me do the other way. If you treat a well-being issue as a performance issue, you're still not going to get the results because you're not addressing the root of the problem. It's the performance that's the problem, and you need to do strategies to address the performance. It's not going to improve because the person's well-being is still not being addressed. They're still going to be stressed out, burnt out. And so you're not going to get any improvement in any area.
I think, team, we have lost Monique. So let's give her a minute. I saw that she froze. And I'm seeing that her screen is gone. So let's give her a minute and let Monique rejoin us. But yes, was it Sharon that was saying that, or Sharon? I agree with you wholeheartedly in terms of what you were saying there, but I'm obviously not the facilitator of this session, but we can get Monique's view when she rejoins us. So let's just give it a minute. Apologies. I'll just drop Monique a message and see if she's all good.
She's back.
Ah,
I am so sorry. You're really calling like crazy, and this happened 2 days ago. The electricity went out. So let me so I actually have it on hotspot at the moment. So let me just get my presentation back up.
okay.
Sorry, folks.
And then Sharon was giving some thoughts to the question that you'd raised. So I don't know if she wants to. I did say we'll just let her reshare that once you rejoined, Monique.
Come back. Sharon, go ahead.
Okay, I was saying that if you treat the anxiety, the well-being,
Yeah.
the performance issue as a well-being issue, you're not going to solve the problem, because the performance issue needs specific strategies to deal with the shortcomings.
Yeah.
And if it is a well-being issue that's affecting the performance, then you're still not addressing the root of the matter, the crux of the matter. So the person's well-being is not being addressed, and the performance is not going to improve either. If anything, is going to deteriorate because they're still under pressure. They're still feeling the burnout and the overwhelmingness, that is my word, of all that they have to do.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. So what we do at that point is we risk the well-being of the individual. If it is a well-being issue and we're trying to treat it like a performance issue, we risk, if anything, we risk increasing the distress that they're feeling at that point in time, emotionally, mentally, and so on. And what we know is that can start to impact them physically. If we start treating a performance issue like a well-being issue, then what we're not doing is holding individuals accountable for performance. And so we're also risking impacting the standards for that particular task or role or whatever it may be. So it's important to be able to make that distinction, because the thing is that HR sits at the intersection of both, right? Business priorities and the employee well-being. So you're taking care of the employee's well-being whilst also managing business priorities. But in that, we have to make sure that we're diagnosing correctly whether or not this is a well-being issue or whether this is something that is a performance challenge. So from an organizational perspective, we're protecting performance, we're maintaining fairness, we're ensuring compliance, consistency, and so on. And then in terms of the well-being of the individuals, making sure that we take care of them, we're supportive, and that they have access to resources, right? Now, it doesn't mean that you're expected to be a therapist, but you are the ones that are positioned to recognize the early warning signs and be able to foster the environment where these conversations can happen. So HR is a bridge, because essentially what we're doing is translating that individual's needs into sustainable practices. Okay. All right. So what does it mean when we start talking about spotting? Before we respond, we have to be able to spot. So here are some early signs of what distress can look like. All right, I'm just giving you a second to just absorb that.
And there's a comment in the
People-
chat also as well, Monique.
Yes, let me have a look. Maintaining that balance can be absolutely, absolutely, which is why we're doing this, right? And which is why we have a section on protecting yourself, checking in with yourself. And you're going to hear me say this again, what I'm about to say. And what I'm about to say, and I'm responding to what you've just said, is that our job is not to fix. And sometimes that's what we do. We jump in and fix, or we feel we need to fix the problem. Our job is to guide to where they can get resources. Yeah. Now, the thing is that employees rarely say, oh, right, I am struggling. Sometimes they do, right? Sometimes they don't know that what they're actually struggling with is their mental health versus their physical. Why? Because physical makes us pay attention, right? Our physical health makes us pay attention. My head hurting me, my back hurting me. I got digestive problems, my stomach, acid reflux. That we pay attention to that. Emotional is not as tangible. So what happens is that it's like a slow creep, a slow burn, because we don't really pay attention to it in the same way. It requires us to really be tuned into what's happening to us. And then the other thing as well, too, it's difficult to get empathy for it. Somebody will empathize if you have a broken foot, because you can see that you have a broken foot, right? So, oh my gosh, you're hurting, how your foot, why are you limping? And you get it all without even asking, right? But when you have a pain that's inside, in fact, those are the worst, because it's difficult to get validation for that in the first place, right? Now, what are we seeing? We're seeing things like work performance changes. It might be missed deadlines, and it's things that are uncharacteristic to individuals, right? So uncharacteristic mistakes, deadlines, absenteeism, or the other end of it, presenteeism. So I'm there, but I'm disengaged. What else do we see? Behavioral changes. So irritability, mood swings, loss of enthusiasm. And then, of course, there is the physical. So don't ignore the physical. Somebody starts complaining frequently, or you start recognizing that you've got more headaches, more stomach issues, fatigue, sleep patterns. Those are the 3 things that I ask first of clients, right? Is this impacting your sleep? Have you noticed the problems there? What else is happening physically? Social as well. So in terms of interacting with others, you may avoid meetings, or in meetings become more defensive or maybe self-critical. So that might be turned inward, right? So these are some of the things that you might actually notice. So in terms of a real quick tool for you to think about, notice, talk, refer. So notice, and those are some of the signs that I've talked about already on there, right? Notice whether there's some patterns that are uncharacteristic for the individual. Listen to what they're saying, and then talk. And talk is simply about listening. Simply about listening. And what you want to do is approach it with care and kindness, no judgment, just curiosity. You know, you have that conversation in private, and it could literally be a casual, I noticed that you seem a bit quieter than usual, Maria. You know, how are you doing? Literally, nice open question, very informal, non-judgmental, very gently presented, and that's all you need to do. And your job is not to be a counselor. That is not your job. Your role is to connect them to help, right? So whether that help is you have you determine that this is something that really sits outside your bucket and they need to be referred to an assistant program or whatever it is, whatever help looks like. But at the beginning, all we're doing is listening. We're listening. Okay. All right. And not interrupting and without judgment. So what I have here is actually a built-out script so you can see what this looks like. Very simple. So it's gentle. Notice you seem a bit quieter than usual in a meeting. Just checking in. You good? How you doing? Right? So now what we're going to do is normalize the feeling. It's okay. Doesn't mean that they're a weak person. So we say, yeah, I could feel a bit. I know things can feel a bit overwhelming sometimes. I know that you got a lot of pressure right now. Normal to hit rough patches. Look, anything on your mind, I'm here. That's what you're doing. So that's the invite. Okay. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it sounds like you're having a rough time for sure. Well, look, we could, you know, you don't have to do this alone. So if you want, I could connect you with, or we could do this or whatever next thing is. But, you know, together we could figure out if there's what other options there are. 3 steps. So I'm going to pause there because I've gone through those 2 slides relatively quickly, but I want to see if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to contribute at this stage. While I take a sip of water. Something that you're doing already, perhaps.
Thanks for sharing this. In my experience, I've had some persons who get very defensive when you try to assist.
Yeah.
So it's trying to create that balance in terms of trying to help them, refer them for that assistance, but not
Yes.
trying to be too invasive into, you know, what's going on with them at the time.
Absolutely. So that gentleness is key. And what I usually say is that we're so eager to help. Thanks so much for that, Miro, because you're absolutely right. Not everybody wants the help, knows they need help, appreciates the help. Sometimes they're embarrassed that they've been noticed. You know, there's a whole bunch of reasons. And the mere fact that you've done step 1 is enough, right? So this is where we really need to pay attention to what's not being said and kind of looking at the nonverbals if we happen to be in front of them or if we're speaking to them and we can't see them, really sort of listen to the audio to think about, to the verbal, to think about what's in their vocal intonation that's saying that they want this conversation to continue or that they're not comfortable with it. Because you can kind of gauge that just based on the first bit without making the offer of help. And you know then whether or not to go beyond that. I notice you seem a bit quiet today. Just checking in. How things, you good? Go ahead, Paulette.
Hi, good afternoon. Let's say we notice like a coworker just being quiet and you offer some assistance, but the person not willing to share or talk or engage. What would you recommend in a situation like that?
Great. Okay. And can you give me an example of a script for that? So you've
Okay,
gotten beyond stage 1.
right. So I've noticed you being quiet and the person like,
Mhm.
oh, it's nothing, and kind of brush that aside.
Okay,
What's the next step?
great. Okay, great. Perfect. So there are a couple of things that you can do. If they've brushed me off, sometimes what I've done is left it at that point because I've indicated, you see, what I've done is I've indicated I've noticed something is different, right? And sometimes, many times, people aren't aware that they're showing up differently in their different spaces, whether that's personally or at work. Very often people feel like I am great at masking. And so I have all this stuff going on at home and nobody knows that I've got stuff going on at work. Well, we all know that's not true, right? So invariably, what we don't want to do, we don't want to exacerbate the situation if they're feeling prickly about it. So sometimes what I do is I don't go beyond point one. I go, okay, point taken. Just letting you know that, if I'm here. And that's fine. I don't need to push beyond that. So that tends to be my approach. And then the second thing, if there's a second step, is to continue to observe and monitor. Because if it is really something that's a one-off versus something that is ongoing, I'll be able to see the difference between whether they return back to form or not. Now, it may be that they very well kind of shape up and go, okay, I need to manage because people are starting to notice, and that's fine. Our job is not to dig and dig and dig and to ask people to expose stuff that they're not ready to expose. Maybe it's stuff that they haven't processed yet themselves. Our job is just to make sure that they understand that the help is there. So I will observe. And if, a couple of weeks goes by and I notice things are still happening, then that might be the time that I gently approach it again. Yeah. But initially, I'm not going to push. Does that help, Paulette?
Yes, thank you.
You're most welcome. Anybody else? Anybody tried this methodology, feels this doesn't work, have other scenarios like Paulette? Because yes, this script looks great, but that's not necessarily how people present. Okay. All right. So with that being said, then we know how to spot. So you've been given the signs on how to spot. I'm just going to go back to that again, just to remind you. So that's on this slide. What are the early signs of distress? So these are some of the things that turn up. And remember, it's not just turning up in isolation. There tends to be a pattern. It's uncharacteristic for the individual. So that's what we're looking for. And so your role is notice, talk, refer. And what I want you to see here is that we are not diagnosing, we're just noticing patterns. And this is an example of a script. But the script doesn't mean that you have to stick to these words. You obviously use a language that feels good. You are sticking to a gentle entry into that conversation. You're normalizing how they're feeling. So these things you are sticking to. Yeah, you invite them to tell you more. So it is an invitation, it is not a demand. And then the third step is the provision of support and next steps. If that individual is at a space where they are ready to do so. So if they're not, then we don't push past point number one. Okay. So given that that's what we do when we're in that moment, how do we as HR professionals ensure that we are creating an environment that is supportive, a supportive environment for individuals in the first place? And there are two key components to this. So there's some micro things we can do, some micro actions that we can take, but there's also created psychological safety. And psychological safety is a term that has been around in HR, in our discipline, for a long, long, long time. What does it really mean? What does it mean to you when we talk about psychological safety? Let's break down the jargon. What does it mean?
Me, sorry, to me, it means that I feel safe in this space where if I have to tell my superior or another colleague something, that I feel that it's safe there, that there's no condemnation, no reprisal. Yeah, that's what it means to me.
Absolutely. Well done. Well done. Absolutely. It is about ensuring that if things aren't going right, even if I have a task to do and it hasn't gone well, I am not finding myself in a blame culture. It is safe for me to be able to say, look, I messed up. I messed up bad. I need to fix it. That is psychological safety. It is safe for me to say, and in the context of mental health, being able to say, look, I'm exhausted right now. And there's no judgment around that. There is no repercussion around that. There is no punishment around that. And that is absolutely key because sometimes what individuals encounter, which I'm sure you've heard before, is that when they believe that they are in a place of safety and they share something with their manager or colleague or whatever, they may feel as though they're being victimized because they've decided to share something. And so from an HR perspective, it is our job to make absolutely sure that we are doing things and creating an environment that communicates that that is not okay. So one of the things, when we look at psychological safety and making it okay to talk about just how I'm feeling right now or what I'm going through right now, it's about HR as a body and leaders as a body encouraging your leaders to share when they've accessed, for example, employee assistance program as an example, or taking a mental health day if it is something that you have as a policy within your organization. Being able to model it is absolutely key. Normalizing those conversations. So team meetings that start, for example, with a quick check-in, like how is everybody doing today? And I know that that is something that happens quite frequently. Sometimes you can take that check-in a little bit deeper though. So what I have done in the past is with teams, I used to say things like, what color are you today? And the reason I would ask that is because the color tended to give me more of an emotional response. And I wanted people to be okay saying that they were feeling gray today or, things are feeling quite grim. I wanted it to be okay to be able to talk about that. So sometimes my check-in was done or articulated in such a way that we would be talking about how I'm actually feeling to normalize that it's okay to say, well, look, today I'm just not all here today. Yeah. The no penalty culture is key. So ensuring that policies, if they don't say so right now, explicitly state that mental health support is not going to negatively affect somebody's performance review or promotion. So those are some of the ways that from an HR perspective, you can become prescriptive about that. And I cannot reiterate enough the confidentiality aspect, reminding employees that personal disclosures will be kept private and handled respectfully, and making sure that that's exactly what happens. Because far too often that is where trust is eroded. And in order to be able to support individuals, sometimes the reasons why people are hesitant to share is because they're not sure if it's going to be kept confidential. So those are some of the things that actually really create psychological safety within organizations, within workplaces. When we're talking about some of the little things that you can do, it means things like being careful with the language that we use. It means allowing, in terms of policies and stuff like that, allowing flexible start times. So ensuring that the organization allows flexible start times for people if they have maybe a medical appointment or they're going to therapy, or in other words, demonstrating that there is a real understanding that wellness. So when we talk about being healthy, healthy has two components to it: the physical as well as the mental. It's the reason why doctors in the last 5 to 10 years have made a major switch from only asking about what what conditions have shown up traditionally in your family, to asking you, tell me about your major stresses. What kind of work you do? What you have going on? You have children, tell me about that. Because there is an understanding, it is clear now, the research is there. We had enough years to find out that wellness is not just about physical anymore, it's about mental. And your mental health impacts your physical impacts your mental. So we have to demonstrate in our policies, in our actions, and what we say and we do, that both of those things are just as important, and one doesn't take priority over the other. Just because we can't see one doesn't mean that it is less important or that it gets less attention or less care than the other. We also have a job to model self-care ourselves, so that means, yes, us taking a lunch break too, and not just rushing and eating lunch at our desks. We need to demonstrate that taking that moment is something that is important by doing it ourselves and encouraging others to do the same thing. So if we're managing teams, making sure that we tell people, no, go outside, have your lunch. Why are you eating at your table? Why are you eating at your desk? And sharing.
Have we got you back, Monique? Are you there? Yes. You're on mute though.
I am so sorry. Let me pull up
These things
again.
happen.
Yes. I'm hearing lots of generators going on in the background because of this. Okay. Everybody should be saying that now. Okay. Micro actions. That's what we've gotten to, right? We were talking about the little things that we can do. Encouraging breaks, little micro breaks. So reminding people to get up, stretch, step away from the screen, go outside. I'm always saying to people, go outside of the four walls. That's important. Or take a walking meeting. Do a walking 10-minute meeting instead of an indoor meeting. So there are things you can do. And the other thing that you can do is ensure that the resources that are available are visible. It's amazing the amount of people that come to me as clients. They're coming from corporate backgrounds. And because I know the corporate background, I say, well, doesn't your organization, I'm pretty sure that your organization has an EAP program. They go, really? Do they? I'm not sure. I'll go, okay, we'll ask. And maybe because it's not visible. Yes, you might have sent it out in an email. Yes, you might have put it in some kind of portal or something, but also making sure that it's visible, just even like a hotline, a support hotline is visible in a common space in addition to those platforms is absolutely important. So again, I think this is a good opportunity for you guys to engage with me. Tell me a little bit about what's coming to mind as I've gone through this in terms of creating an environment. Maybe share some of the things that you've done and that works. Anybody willing to share maybe some of the practices that have worked for you? If you have an EAP program, are people accessing it?
Yes, we do have an employee assistance program at my office, and I also encourage persons, well, the managers and supervisors, to engage their flexible work schedules for those persons who are having challenges at home. Whether it's because sometimes these persons are late habitually, that's not their normal, way of coming to work. So then once you've had that conversation with the person, then you realize, okay, they're having some challenges just temporarily. And we arrange for them to come in on a flexible schedule or even working from home, because I think COVID-19 taught us that you can do some things from at home. You don't have to be physically present in the office. So those are some of the things that we've employed.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Anybody else? And the other thing too that I want you to be mindful of is that, some people might be out there thinking, well, Monique, I don't work for a large organization that has the ability or the capacity to be able to provide access to these things. Now, you might not have a company sponsored program, but for example, I work with some small organizations from the perspective that it doesn't mean that you can't still steer people towards guidance. So, for example, I'm a name that people will refer to if they realize, okay, somebody needs mental health assistance. And the small company might decide, we will sponsor 2 sessions for this person. Or they may not have the capacity to do so, but they say, well, look, if you're interested, we know that this individual deals with these particular types of issues. If you're interested in, finding support around financial counseling, we know that this person can do that or this organization can do that. So it doesn't matter whether or not you're a small organization or a large one. It's about being able to give people guidance and to be able to help steer them into a direction where they can get the help. Allison, our HR team has its own lingo, code words of sorts that allows for micro breaks and time away. Excellent. So everyone on the team will know and understand. Beautiful. Love that. I love that. That's something we can all borrow from. Thank you for that. Any other tools and tips to share out there? Looking. All right. Okay, so as we have about 12 minutes left, which is great, which means that the last 3 slides, we're just in time to talk about us, right? To talk about how do we look after our well-being and boundaries within this role that we have. Because the truth is that HR is often the first stop when employees are distressed. So in many ways, you become the first responders, emotional first responders of the workplace. Think about it. But unlike paramedics, who might get 1 call right now, 1 call in an hour, or maybe have like an hour where there's a frenzy, potentially you could be dealing with this on an ongoing basis. And of course, the risk is that you're carrying everyone else's stress while still managing your own workload. And that's where compassion fatigue comes in, when your emotional batteries are drained from just giving so much support continuously, and if you're in an organization where the employee ratio to HR support is high, then you're constantly on. And the thing is that compassion fatigue, it creeps in quietly. So what you might notice is that you feel emotionally flat, so you don't have the same empathy you usually do, or you struggle to switch off afterwards. Sometimes it looks like the physical exhaustion. So some of the things that I spoke about earlier, headaches, sleep problems. The main thing is recognizing these signs early and not to see them as a sign of weakness, but to say it about your human limits. You can't pour from an empty cup. And what I usually say to people is that, when we talk about capacity, whether you have capacity sits in 3 buckets: physical capacity, mental capacity, as in your cognitive capacity, and then your emotional capacity. Now, we talked about how physical causes us to pay attention, right? My head hurting me, I can't do anymore. Okay. Mental capacity, our cognitive ability, also tells us, look, my brain is just fried. I've been looking at the same email for the last hour, or I've read it 6 times and it still don't make sense to me. Done. Emotional is the one that we pay less attention to. It's there, but we pay less attention to it. It's not as tangible. And so we also have to tune into whether, do I have the emotional capacity to deal with this right now? Let me just see what's going on in the chat. Muriel says, I once had an employee say to me, "Ma'am, you're there for everyone. Who do you go to when you need to talk?" It was an eye-opener for me. And I imagine, Muriel, thank you so much for that everybody out there can relate to this at some point or the other. And especially if you're in a small organization and you're the person, you are HR, or you are one other person, that's it. Who y'all going to speak to? right? Because one's looking at the other and going, well, you know, I know that they got their burden. I can't go to them. So let me just hold it. Let me just hold it down. Right? So it's really, really important that you're able to say to yourself, okay, do I have the emotional capacity right now? And emotional capacity is impacted by everything. It's not just a work thing, it's a personal thing. So if I'm going through stuff at home, if I have a child, and the child is ill, or I'm going through disagreement with my partner right now, or I'm building a house, and these things are causing their own stress. That impacts the bucket that I have for emotional capacity. I have only so much, and I need to be tuned into that, right? So we're in a very unique position because we're balancing care for the individuals, care for the organization. But remember that if you look after your own well-being and you set boundaries, you're not only protecting yourself, but you're modeling what a healthy workplace looks like. And that ripple effect will eventually affect everybody else. Anybody else want to make a comment about this discussion that we're having right now? About HR as the emotional first responders?
I think it is very relevant. It's very true. Everybody comes with their problems,
Yeah.
and you have to try to find a way to not necessarily solve them, but put them in the right direction
Yeah.
and help them, because you know, if they're not coping, then production is not it's not happening. And
Yeah.
so you have to balance both.
Mhm.
And what it will say is, and then there, as you said, the other pressures from outside the workplace.
Right.
And when you are so stressed, sometimes it manifests itself physically. And I know that happened with me twice
Yeah.
in my career, where at one point in time I had a boss who just was not getting along with just about everybody. I had
Yeah.
a good enough relationship with him that I would say, well,
Yeah.
look, we need to talk about this. But
Good.
the stress of everybody coming to me and knowing the problems that they had,
Yeah.
I broke out. I had stress eczema on my back and my
There you-
hands.
Yeah.
And I thought I didn't know what it was at first. But then I
Mhm.
went on vacation for about 2 weeks and it went away. As soon as I came back, it came back. So I knew it was coming from work. And
Yes.
then again in COVID, I was dealing with COVID and, you know, all that came with. And
Mhm.
a mother who had been diagnosed with dementia. And I got
Yeah.
stress eczema again on my hands, and I could not believe it.
Yeah.
So it's a very real thing. It's something
Mhm.
that we need to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we need to seek help too when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. And that was my thank you for that, because that was my next question is what do we do about it? Do we seek help? Do we make use of the same resources that are available to us as we're telling people to step away, you know? Because we know that it's having we have the examples. We have the examples. And I'm just looking, Kim says, I completely agree with what's been said. There's no HR for HR. You expect it to be there for everyone at all times and sometimes neglecting your own well-being. Absolutely. Maria, as HR practitioners, we have to remember that we are human too. Yes. Yes, absolutely, which is exactly why Herman put this on, because we tend to forget that all we are is human. Now, we might be doing superhuman things, don't get me wrong, very often we are, but we have only so much capacity, right? We have only so much. It is not endless. It is not, and our ability to not deal with how many things are coming to us at any one point in time is not a testament to your character. It is not that. It is just that you are human. So thank you for that. And so what do I do, Monique? How do I do a self check to make sure that I don't find myself in burnout? Because if anything, we're even more at risk of that, right? So here's a quick little self check, which is basically telling you to pause, halt, right? Am I hungry? Oh, yeah, okay. Yes, this is a very real thing. Am I hungry? Am I physically nourished? Because why? Skipping meals can mimic stress or anxiety. If you're hungry, your patience drops. That's the reality. If you're hungry, your patience drops. Now, people will say, oh, Monique, I'm so used to not eating. It doesn't affect me. No, you're just not aware of how it's affecting you. That's all. You're just not, it's become a norm for you. So you're not actually aware of how much better you could do if you were actually nourished. That's it. That's what that is. I'm angry. Maybe I'm angry. Am I holding on to frustration from an earlier situation? Because obviously the most recent thing can impact me. That frustration might be an earlier situation at home. It might be an earlier situation in workplace. Remember that unchecked anger can spill into our interaction. So if I'm angry, or if it's not anger, but I'm irritated and it's frustration, your empathy shrinks, right? And oh my goodness, what if I'm both? What if I'm angry? What if I'm one, I didn't have a meal, and I'm feeling a bit irritable as well. The two of those, well, we all know what that looks like, right? When we talk about L, the lonely, this is really talking about connection, right? Am I feeling disconnected or am I feeling unsupported? Do I feel like I am just alone in all of this right now? And what we know is that connection helps to buffer the compassion fatigue because it's not just an individual looking within. It's not just you looking within and feeling a sense of, I'm having to cope with this all alone. So connection is important as well. And that's one that we don't necessarily pay attention to, especially in a role like HR, which is a support role and tends to have, all these people coming to one person. Where do I get connection? How do I get connection? That connection is important. So having your peers is important as well. Tired. So T is for tired. Am I mentally or physically exhausted? Because fatigue reduces patience and clarity. So if you're tired, everything feels harder. So before you step into a difficult conversation, a difficult situation, I just want you to pause. Just pause for 30 seconds. Nothing major is going to happen if you pause. And just do a little check-in, And if one or more of those areas are flagged, then you can take some kind of step, a little snack, do some deep breathing, have a quick chat with somebody, maybe go stretch your legs, do what you need to do to address that thing so that you can show up the way that you need to show up for that situation, for that individual. All right. Anybody out there could relate to this. What do you think about this tool? Do you have your own tools that you want to share with those of us that are on here? I'm happy to hear what you guys have got going on already so I can add it to my toolkit.
Well, not in terms of the this self chat, but what I find helps is exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And yeah, those feel good hormones kick in, and you tend to
Absolutely.
forget it for a bit, and you can come down. So exercise
Absolutely.
helps.
Movement is absolutely key. Yes. So we may not want to do jumping jacks in the middle of our office, although some of us do have done that. But yeah, movement. Walk around, go outside, walk around, some movement. 10 minutes, 5 minutes makes a world of difference. I'm just going to look in the chat. Take a vacation. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's only a 5-minute vacation, Muriel. But yes, take a vacation. Being in nature is great. Absolutely. Being in nature is great, which is why I say to people, if you work within an office environment, if there's no other time of the day that you do it, particularly as I mentioned that we have a tendency to sit down at our desk sometimes and eat, go outside. Go outside and eat. Go outside and do it. I love the fact that you can still see people going to the beach and taking their break at the beach, their car, the doors open, and they're just surrounded by nature. And they don't know how much good that's doing for them. My dogs provide a great 5-minute. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely, Karen. Get you smiling again. But movement is absolutely key. Movement and nutrition is key. And so I'm just going to take like 30 seconds to explain why that's so important as well. And with my clients, I often ask them about their nutrition and ask them about their movement. And why? Because when we are feeling our lowest, so when we are feeling low energy, or we're feeling depressed, or we're feeling anxious, or we're just feeling low, the last thing that we tend to want to do is to eat well and to go and do a big workout. For many of us, is to reach for something that's going to give us that initial hit. Let's reach for chocolate. Let's reach for, oh, I don't have time to go and queue up for a salad. Let me go and get something quick, fast food. Or, the last thing that we want to do is to go and work out. We just don't feel like it. Now, the thing is that is the very thing that can end up sabotaging us. Why? Because what we know is that serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone, it's a feel-good chemical that is released in the stomach. 90% of that is produced through gut health. And what it does, if it's if it's one of the feel-good hormones, what it does is actually balances low moods. But if at that moment in time we're low, but what we're doing is we're not looking towards looking after the nutrition, what we're in fact doing is feeding into those low moods that we're feeling at that moment. We talked just now about movement, about exercise, and how important that is. You're absolutely right. The release of the adrenaline, that again counterbalances the low mood that we're feeling. So what we know, the research has shown, there's evidence out there, you can go out there and look it up. It is not just a matter of opinion, is that the chemicals that are released as a result of good gut health and movement actually helps to counteract those low moods. Okay. All right, looking in the chat, we see Maria saying, all is a great self-check. Taking a 10-minute break does wonders in the middle of the day, especially away from one's desk. A lot of us do it, but having lunch at your desk is not a healthy habit. Absolutely. Yes. If there's one thing that you do differently that you take away from today, if that's something you're doing, I want you to aim not to be doing that going forward, or at least try it one day less first and see how that affects your mood. Okay, so that leads me into the last slide, which is looking at how to set these healthy boundaries while staying supportive. And the one thing I want you to remember is that boundaries are not barriers. Boundaries are not barriers. And the reason I've said that twice is because sometimes it comes across as though that's what a boundary is. And people say, yes, no, I have my boundaries. I just say no. It's not a barrier. So what a boundary does is it allows you to stay present without absorbing somebody else's distress. So how to stay present without absorbing somebody else's distress. So you've got time boundaries. So it's okay to schedule a follow-up. So imagine that you're having a conversation with somebody, you find that it's going into this long conversation. It's okay to say, look, let me just stop you there. I realize that this is really playing on you. I want to make sure that I'm present and that we have another opportunity to sit down and chat. So far we've agreed that you're going to do this, do that. I'm going to send you some information. Let's schedule a follow-up so that I can see how you're doing. That's a way that you can do that. So you don't have to stay in an hour-long conversation. That is not necessary. Be clear on your role. Remind yourself, I'm here to listen and connect them to resources. I'm not here to fix everything myself. That is not your job. I'm here to listen and to connect them. Emotional boundaries. So you can empathize. That is what we're meant to do, empathize, but you don't have to over-identify with them. So I can hear this is tough for you. Not I feel the same way, or this happened to me as well. None of that. I can hear this is tough for you. So you can empathize, but be careful of over-identifying, because then you get drawn into the distress. And remember your support system. Remember to reach out to your peer networks. Even if you're the lone person in HR, you have HERMAB, you have your peers to reach out to. You have this network, you have people to reach out to. Your own manager, who is it that you're reporting to when the load feels heavy, and remember that you have a script. the script that I shared with you that allows you to remain boundaried, right? It allows you to be able to say, look, I can see this is tough. Glad you shared it with me. I want to make sure that you're getting the right support. So let's sit down and look at some of the resources that are available for you. So I want you to remember that protecting your boundaries doesn't make you any less caring. What it does is ensures that you can sustain your support role without burning you out, right? So it's about ensuring that this is sustainable in the long term. It's about being supportive without losing yourself in the process. Okay, and so folks, that's led me into my last slide. I think time-wise, yes, we're definitely there. I've gone a few minutes after, but we did start a few minutes after, so I hope that's okay, Karen. And rather than go through a long spiel of recapping, what would be good is to maybe just ask people to drop in the chat or come on the mic. I've heard mostly from 3 or 4 people, but you can drop in the chat if you don't want to come on the mic. What's been a takeaway for you? What's one nugget that, or maybe one thing that you'll do differently?
I am definitely going to stop eating lunch at my desk.
Yay! Thank you, Dawn. I just saw your note, your comment about not over-identifying. Nice, Sharon.
This has been a great session. Let me just say, I don't want to
Thank
hog the,
you.
but this has been an excellent, excellent session.
Thank
Truly
you. Appreciate you
appreciate
saying
it.
that. Most welcome. Thanks, Muriel. Okay. Maria says, great session. Thank you, folks. Thank you, folks. Anybody else gonna hold themselves accountable to do something different? You're welcome, Rashida. Because y'all have the hard work, This was the easy part. Me doing this is the easy part. Y'all have the hard work now. You have to go and do something. All right. So without taking up much more of your time, I shall hand back over to lovely Karen and say thank you very much to Herman for giving me this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to come back into these spaces because I spent so much of my time in the corporate space. So I feel I can really identify with a lot of these challenges. And hopefully I've made it practical in a way that people can go away and do something right away. So thank you.
Monique, thank you very much on behalf of Hamad. That's, as you said, it's been, and all the comments that are coming through on the chat
Thank you.
really, really are, absolutely all feeding into the fact that it's been a very, very helpful session, enlightening session. And, I think it's the fact that we often forget about all of these things as HR professionals. And so, just having this time today to reconnect and to get you bringing them to the forefront of our awareness again, Monique, is so critical. It's so important. As you said, I've written down lots of nuggets of things, so I'm not going to go through all of those, but
Yes.
I really like the what color are you today? That one actually stuck with me. Yeah. And I like halt too, but there are just so many things. So on behalf of Hamab, we'd really like to thank you for giving up your time today and coming and doing this session. As I say, everybody on the chat is really very much behind and very supportive of how informative and helpful it's been, Monique. So thank you so much. There've been a couple of questions. I said I would come back to you at the end. The slides, the recording will be up on the Hamab's website. I can't give you a time frame for it, but keep checking in, and then you'll find it on the Hamab website. So you will be able to find it again for those people who've been eagerly wanting to know how they can find that afterwards. But yes, everyone on this call, please make sure you take time for you, and that you do look after yourself as much as you look after everybody else. And Monique, everyone on the call, thank you for your time, and we hope to see you at another session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, just one thing I will say is that that some people have asked me about these sessions. So if it is something that you're interested in within your own organization, then you can contact me. You will be getting these slides, so you'll see all the information there. But I do work with some companies where I do things like webinars for them as well on different mental health topics. So for that question, I had a question come through privately on my cell. That is just so that you know.
Perfect. No, absolutely. Perfect. As you said, this is about connecting people. So
Absolutely.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you know how to find me. And thank you again.
absolutely.
Be well. Be well all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody on the
you.
call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.